To me in my previous video that I made the jumping, and when I'm making things I'm not focusing as much on describing how they work. And so I don't know if I actually described how this jumping works, and maybe if you followed you're like, okay, great, that's how it works, but maybe you were just copying the code and you don't know what's going on. So let's describe it a little bit and see what's going on here. I've got a velocity for my x, a velocity for my y. I don't think I'm really using the velocity for the x at all in this program, whatever. And then I have a state for the player to check if they're jumping or not. And on step, I'm going to check, I'm always going to be updating the player's y location based off of the y velocity. Always doing that just to make sure that, we're following those velocity rules. We're also checking to see if the player is jumping. So this is, if the player dot is jumping is true, if the player is jumping, I start accelerating the player downwards. So the idea here is I did a jump, the player's now in the air, and I want to make sure that they are accelerating downwards while they're jumping, right? While they're in the air. And then next, I have a check in the on step that checks if the player's bottom is ever past the edge of the screen, greater than or equal to 400. Maybe you want to check, if the player dot hits an object, then you stop, except the issue is if you hit an object at the side, right? So anyways, that's I talked about that. I'm not doing collision detection. So we're also checking, if the player's jumping and they're in the air, I want to start making them accelerate downwards by adding to their y velocity. And then every step, I, am following that y velocity as it goes down. And then here, if I ever hit the bottom of the screen, if I'm greater than or equal to 400, so I hit the bottom of the screen, I set the y velocity to 0, so I stop moving, and I set is jumping to false, so that I stop accelerating downwards. So that's how, when I'm in the air, I start going down and I stop. And then for the jump, all I did was, if the key that I press is space, and you can make whatever button you want, jump, I'm going to set the player dot is jumping to true, and setting it to true is going to tell the program, hey, I want you to start making it go down, accelerating downwards. And after I say that you're jumping, by the way, I'm also going to give you a ton of velocity up. So your velocity in the y direction is -10, so it's going to start accelerating up pretty darn fast. But then eventually towards the top, right? Well, I'm kind of doing a little gravity simulation here almost, because I set it with a -10 velocity to start, and so the velocity is at -10 while I'm going up and up and up and up. But because it's jumping, I'm slowly lowering the acceleration until actually, sorry, I didn't set an acceleration. I set a velocity, right? And I'm slowly accelerating downwards by adding to the velocity. So the velocity in the first frame was at -10, then it goes plus 0.5. Well, now it's -9.5. So it's still moving up, but just slower. And that's how we're simulating this kind of like it slows down at the top and it starts coming down, is because I set a velocity as you jump, right? You set a lot of velocity, you're going up really fast, and then slowly gravity brings us back down. And so that's the explanation for how the jumping works. You saw at the end of that video, I added a not player is jumping, and this is checking to make sure I'm only going to increase the acceleration if I'm not jumping, right? So, and the player is jumping not. Sorry. I'm only allowed to do this. Let's go over the Boolean logic of this, the Boolean algebra of this, right? Is jumping can be true or false. If it's true, then not true is false. This part becomes false. And because I need both parts to be true for an and to work, the whole thing ends up being false. I skip it. I don't actually reset my velocity. If player.jumping, though, is false, well, not false is true. So then this half of it is true. And as long as I press the space key at that same time, they're both true. So it is true. So this whole part of the if right over here is true. So we do it. So we enter the if, set it to true, and set our velocity to make us go up. If you didn't get that last part, don't worry about it. We kind of skim the Boolean algebra in this course a little bit, and maybe in a future year when we're in real life and in person more, I'll make a video where we talk about Boolean algebra a little bit more and how and versus or works and all that other stuff. But yeah, I'm done here. Hopefully, you watch that 17-minute video to enjoy the process of making the jumps, and you watch this, which is probably now going on a 7-minute video, explaining for at least the first 3 minutes how the jumping works, and then for the last 4 minutes, me rambling. See you next time.